Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of Elevate Leadership Podcast, produced by South Carolina State University Public Service and Agriculture. I'm your host, Elizabeth Mosley Hawkins, and I also serve as Senior Director for Strategic Communications with the agency. We are so glad that you could join us for this episode, and if you're new, I encourage you to make sure that you check out any of our past episodes. So, before I start, I always like to tell you a little bit about SC State PSA. First, our mission is to innovate and educate to elevate the quality of life and the standard of living. And we do this by first offering extension programs and services, or you may call it outreach. And we do that through 5 priority areas. So that's 4-H youth development, community and economic development, education, innovation and support, family health and nutrition, and finally, sustainable agriculture and natural resources. But we don't stop there. We also have a team of scientists and researchers who explore issues that are impacting South Carolinians, and they get out there and conduct research and with the purpose of identifying solutions to solve those problems. So Elevate Leadership Podcast, you can catch us every month. We are on all streaming platforms. And also, if you want to learn a little bit more about SC State PSA, you can log onto the university's website, which is scsu.edu. And we recently just redesigned the university's website. It's beautiful, easy to navigate. So if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to get online and check it out. And as I said, you can find us on any of our streaming platforms. So now that I've got all of that out of the way, I am so excited to introduce to you our guest for today. Gilda Cobb-Hunter is likely the most powerful woman in South Carolina politics. She might get me for saying that. She is a champion for the citizens of South Carolina, but it's most especially District 95, which is Orangeburg County. Gilda has served 32 years in the South Carolina General Assembly, having been elected in 1992. She is the longest serving representative in the South Carolina House. She's recognized as the first person of color to serve as House Minority Leader for 3 years, and she serves as first vice chair for the House Ways and Means Committee. So you can see why I said she's probably the most powerful woman in South Carolina politics. And before we logged on today with the show, we teased her about being a Florida Rattler, Florida A&M Rattler, but I think she can bleed blue and garnet as well. She earned a Bachelor of Science in African American History and a Master's of Arts in American History from Florida State University. She holds numerous honorary doctorate degrees and completed distinguished leadership programs such as the Arthur Fleming Leadership Institute and Eleanor Roosevelt Global Leadership Fellow. So I don't know about you, but I am excited to hear what Ms. Gilda Cobb-Hunter has to say about leadership and her experience. So without further ado, welcome to Elevate Leadership Podcast.
Well, thank you, Liz. Thank you. And let me just say, all of that you've read, I like to share with people. There is absolutely nothing special about me. I'm just a poor little country girl from Gifford, Florida, and it is with His grace and His mercy that I'm able to do the things that I do, say what I say, blah, blah kind of thing. And let me commend you and your team at 1890 for the wonderful work that y'all are doing across the state. I am so impressed with the outreach, with all of the good stuff that you're doing. I saw something recently, the partnership with Mix and Seed Company. I said, go on, Bulldogs. Y'all got it going on. And of course, under the leadership of Dr. Lewis Whiteside, y'all are just really doing great things. So the community appreciates it, and I want to say that. We don't always hear that sometimes, so it's important that we say that.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you
welcome.
so much. Well, much like you, I mean, we're a voice for the voiceless, for minorities in South Carolina, and so we try to best understand what the needs are. and implement programs and services that will help them. So, but before I ask you your first question, I do want to say that you have graciously opened your doors to us. So we are filming on location at Casa Family Systems.
My real job. I like to tell people this is my real job, my heart, my passion. Casa Family Systems is a family violence agency. We've been around for 40 plus years. Started out as a rape crisis center. We are a full-fledged family violence agency, a rape crisis, domestic violence shelter, child advocacy center, you name it. When it comes to family and family dysfunction, Casa Family Systems is here. We serve Orangeburg, Bamberg, and Calhoun counties, and just got a talented bunch of folk who do the work. I like to say to people, you know, I'm just the mouthpiece, if you will. My job is to make sure funding is here so that this important work continues. It would be great to think that we would work ourselves out of business, but unfortunately there will always be people who believe violence is a way to deal with conflict. So we're pretty much going to be around for a minute or two. But I love Casa Family Systems.
And I forgot to mention that that you are a licensed master social worker for over 40 years.
And my colleagues in the legislature hate for me to say it, but I always say, you know, because I think policy, I'm into systems and making sure that systems work. And so it's one of my favorite refrains is I'm just a social worker trying to do good. I think social work is important. Social workers are important. You didn't ask me all that, but I can't miss an opportunity to do a plug for my real job, Casa Family Systems.
But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So with social work and then the work that you do as a public servant in the General Assembly, how does all of that integrate? Because obviously you have a heart for helping people. So how does that all integrate in the work that you do?
Well, for me, it's about servant leadership. You know, it's about believing, as Shirley Chisholm said, that service is the rent we pay for being living in this country. And so I grew up with the attitude that service was important, doing for others, all the good stuff. And so for me, it's a natural integration of just my interest in helping and the policy piece. Because again, without trying to put too much emphasis on it, but I think not enough policymakers do put emphasis on it. I really am into systems change, institutional change. The problems we have nowadays are systemic, and when we don't address it from a systemic basis, what we do is continue to put Band-Aids on problems that require major surgery. And so I'm not sure if this is responsive to your question, but for me, it's just a natural integration of the service and the work. I just think that's important.
So you talk about systems and how a lot of the challenges and problems that we experience is systemic. For leaders who recognize that, how does one attack the systems? Why are you so successful?
That's an interesting question. And you know, when you first said it, I thought, well, the best way to eat an elephant is one small bite at a time. And just to put context in that, I think it depends on what you view as success. And for me, it's about relationships and building relationships, number one. And it's also about recognizing serenity prayer. You know, you got to control, I can't control anybody other than me. And people's actions, all I can control is my reaction to people's behavior. And so when I think about how I'm able to get things done, a lot of it has to do with my perspective on the work. It's not about me, it's about the work. I learned years ago, you'd be surprised at what you can get done when you don't care who gets credit. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people, elected, appointed, and otherwise, who are consumed with
Yes.
getting credit, being recognized, being the one. I don't care about those kinds of things. And there are other people who have similar beliefs. But I just like Nike, I just do it.
Okay.
And I'm not consumed with whether or not people like it necessarily. Again, a lot of who I am is based on how I was brought up. I'm a spiritual person, person of faith. I just think it's important for everybody to recognize all of us are special. We each have a gift.
Yeah.
And if you believe in a higher power, if you believe that God indeed made all of us in his image and he does not make mistakes, it's hard for me to have that kind of belief and then hear my colleagues, for example, and the governor, taking pride in signing nice title, do no harm, but a bill on transgender kids, which is really going to do tremendous harm, in my opinion. But I'll just stop there.
You talked about your background growing up, and I always love to find out how someone grew up and how their life experiences might have influenced their decisions for their career.
I grew up in a large family. There were 7 of us. I'm the middle child. Parents were not educated, high school dropouts. My mom went back and finished school. Her lifelong desire was to be a nurse. She became an LPN. Just working class people, not rich, but not, and we didn't know. If we were poor, we didn't know it. Because it was just a different kind of environment. I grew up with parents who had high expectations of all of us. It was drilled in our head, get an education. Because if you get an education, nobody can take it out. You know, and their desire for us to do better than they did. Just lifelong lessons, you know, make a difference wherever you are, wherever you wind up, make a difference. You know, treat people like you want to be treated until they show you otherwise. Stand for what you believe in, even if you have to stand alone. And so those kinds of lessons, we didn't realize we were being taught lessons until
you got out in the real world,
got out in the real world. It's like, oh, you know,
now I see what that.
You know, and so as a result of that, though, and I like to say, and my grandmother, who had a real close hand in raising us, my grandmother could not read or write, but you could not cheat her out of her money. But my grandmama was the kind of person who just was kind to everybody, never said a bad word. You know, we'd go to church, and that's where I get this thing about church doors, because my granddaddy did not attend church, and she would be like, James, you ought to go to church, you ought to go to church, and he'd be like, Francis, how many people in church every Sunday right now when you gonna bust hell wide open? And so I learned early on the difference between seeing a sermon and hearing one. And I learned early on that not everybody who quotes scripture lives it.
Very true.
And it helps that I have a partner, my husband of 40 plus years, who I love dearly, who is very spiritual and really is the balance. He's the wind beneath my wings. And he keeps me focused. And, you know, when you're out here being who I am with people with all kinds of opinions, many of whom have never had a conversation with me, but I just have to give a shout out to Dr. Terry K. Hunter. Because he's a lot of what I am, I owe to him and his love and support.
So, Gilda Cobb-Hunter is known for being outspoken. But in a good way, right? I mean,
so depending on perspective, but it doesn't matter. You know,
I mean, you really do make a difference, right?
I think I do.
And so, where do you get that courage from? Where does that voice come from?
You know, I've been asked that, and I don't know the answer other than how I was raised. The man I've spent the last 40 plus years with, just upbringing, just being clear about who I am and whose I am. And I've never been one to just try to, I don't go along to get along. I was not brought up that way. And so it's my upbringing more so than anything else. And the longer I'm in this world, the more I recognize the value of not being afraid to speak. The problem I have with a lot of leaders nowadays is they don't give voice. And it's like, why are you here? So many people at all levels, local, state, and federal, in my opinion, are caught up with the title and the tags. They like people bowing and genuflecting and all that kind of good stuff. I think that's a total waste of time. If you are, you know, blessed and highly favored enough to have an elected or appointed position, you ought to be about service.
Be the voice.
Be the voice. Why are you there?
Right.
With the problems that we have now, if you are in a position of power, if you are in a decision-making position, and you're not using that power to make things better for the least of these, then you're a total waste. And see, I'm beyond this business of saying, oh, we got to have black representation. Okay. So what happens when we have black representation that doesn't represent or represents a small segment? You know, and you started our conversation talking about the work that I do for people of color and communities of color, and I use that term rather than minority because when you think globally, people of color are in the majority. And so I just think we have too many people in positions of power who shouldn't be there because they aren't doing the people's business. They are busy enriching themselves and their circle, but when you look systematically, then there's some problems, and you ask yourself, or at least you should ask yourself, what good has it done? And let me be real clear. I don't want it to come across that I'm only talking about black representation or representatives of color. I'm talking across the board. You know, it really makes sense, though. People like these jobs. They like being recognized, you know, and that's why I make an extra effort to keep it real, because you can't get consumed with these titles.
Right.
Because you got it now. My grandma always used to say, you know, because you got it now don't mean you're going to always have it.
Right.
And so I just think we all could do better.
But how do you said you need to come into your power. How does one do that, especially if they are an emerging leader and they're still trying to figure out who they are, how they want to lead? How does one do that?
All of what you just said. If you want, for me, I think the best advice that I would offer somebody is, why do you want to do it? Tell me why you want to do this. Because that informs what kind of leader they're going to be.
Okay.
If you want to do it because you see yourself up here and this is the step to get up there, then you'll govern yourself, as they say in the Baptist church. You'll govern yourself accordingly. But, you know, so you got to be clear with you. You got to look at that face in the mirror and say, face. You know, like Michael Jackson says, the man in the mirror. There's a lot of wisdom in that song. And so I think you have to just check yourself. Okay. Why am I doing this? Am I doing it because somebody said it'd be a good idea for me to do it? Am I doing it because this person is doing it? You know, just have a conversation with self about the why. Okay. Because if you're clear on why you're doing it, then I believe that helps you do it. Regardless, good or bad. Yeah. Why you're doing it is going to govern how you do it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. So let me ask you this. So if you are consistently advocating for a group of people or as a leader just for your organization, and sometimes it could be tiring.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh God, trust me.
How do you stay motivated? How does one stay motivated in the process of being a leader?
Yeah, again, You can tell I'm still in love after all these years. But again, I have that strong support at home. That's number one. And my faith and spirituality. And then the other piece of it is it's okay to take a break. We all get tired, but I'm beginning to be more of a fan of self-care than I used to be.
Okay.
Because self-care is important, and if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to be out here helping other people? Exactly. That's a lesson I had to learn recently, if you will, because I'm real type A person, you know, ever ready bunny kind of thing. And so sometimes you can burn the candle at both ends and in the middle and not realize it. And so self-care is important. It's okay to take a break, but you can't quit. You know, respite, but take a respite. But come back, refresh, renew, re-energize, all them nice little buzzwords all these people use nowadays. It's okay to take a break, because what's important is taking care of yourself so that you can continue to do for others and to be there for others. But one of the things, if I could just say, look, regardless of anything else, don't be scared. We got too many scared people in leadership positions.
Why do you think that?
Because they want to stay there, and they think it's easier to go along to get along, and I can't make nobody mad, and I better do this. I mean, really? I just wish people would understand the importance of having a thumb in their spine, you know, so you can stand straight, stand tall. Because what I learned is that people respect you more when you are honest and share. You know, you don't have to be confrontational, but just learn to disagree agreeably. It's hard to do that nowadays with the toxic nature of our politics. But I mean, people say, oh, she's a Democrat, black woman, and she get along with them Republicans, but more than the Democrats, because they have grown to respect my opinion. They respect me. I'm consistent. My word is my bond. I'm not going to say this thing to this group and this thing to this group. I don't lie, because it's too much trouble when you lie
like, what
to
did I
remember.
say?
Now, what did I say? Waste of energy. Total waste of energy. And I really have discovered that respect is earned. It's not automatic, and that's where a lot of elected officials and appointed just they miss the mark. Because they think, oh, I got a title, that means people are going to respect me. Well, no. Have you done anything to earn their respect? It is earned. It is not conferred by a title, in my opinion.
I want to stick with the idea of leaders being resilient, and how do you grow that thick skin that they talk about?
I don't know the answer to that, Liz. I think you just do.
Okay.
And after a while, it becomes easier and easier. The one piece I didn't add that I think is important in leaders is humility. One of the people I admire so much, who is no longer here, is former Congressman John Lewis. When I think about Congressman Lewis and what he endured, and I had the honor of meeting him personally and just over time having conversations with him, and the humility was just awesome to me, because I'm like, wow. This guy, I mean, we all know his story. And he was just like you and I said, he was just real. Really? No pretense, no air of importance, arrogance. And people like him, Maya Angelou, I remember meeting her years ago.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I was involved in this national organization, National Coalition Against Sexual Assault. I was on the executive board committee, some position. That's been, good Lord, that was back in the 80s. Anyhow, we used to do annual conferences, and we had her come speak.
She was a victim. too as well. Yeah.
And we had her come speak, and we had the officers had an opportunity to kind of sit with her that evening or whatever before the event the next day. And I remember introduced just saying, and she's just Maya Angelou. And I was like, oh my God.
I know, you are Maya Angelou.
I mean, oh, you don't need to tell me who you are.
Right.
I know who you are.
Yes.
But her humility just struck me. I just like that. I like people who don't take themselves too seriously.
So why do you think that's important for a leader to have?
Because it keeps you grounded. It keeps you centered. You don't get all caught up with who you are and the title. And again, for me, it keeps you focused on those people who you're there to serve. You got to be approachable. At least I think so. And what I found is that most people are like, you sure you're a representative? you don't seem like no politician, which I'm not really. I'm an elected official, although that's a whole another conversation about the difference in that. But I just think it makes sense. I just think it is in keeping with servant leadership. And I see myself as a servant leader. And servants, the word says that to serve is what's important. And so for me, it keeps it real, and people trust me. People have a way of breaking it down for you, you get too big for your britches, like they used to say.
For your coattails.
Yeah. So it works for me, and it makes me happy. It helps me keep things in perspective. And most importantly, I always try to remember where I came from. I am not one of these people who want to forget how I grew up, where I grew up. Years ago, when I was at Florida A&M University on the highest of 7 hills. I had college classmates say, where you from, Miami? Where you from? I'm from Chicago. I'm from Gifford. It's near Vero Beach, 3 miles from Vero Beach. And my point is, and I used to do this in my speeches, I used to say to folks, you need to be careful not claiming where you really are, because first of all, it's an opportunity to do a geography lesson for people, right?
Yes.
And then the other piece is, invariably, there's going to be somebody in that audience who
knows where you're from.
And who know where you're from. And you get up there and claim some big city or whatever town next to you, and it's going to be, and she knows she ain't from there. She right from so and so and so. So don't even bother
You're
with all that.
talking about me, because when I was little, of course, I grew up in Orangeburg, but then we moved to Maryland. So now I like to say, I'm from Maryland.
I'm from Maryland.
But people who know me is like, girl, you right from Orangeburg.
You know you from the bird. You know you from the bird.
So I have two places of residency.
Think about it. It's so much less energy and effort to just be straight up.
Yeah.
And people appreciate that.
It's true.
People really do.
It's true. I want to shift gears.
Okay.
You talked a little bit earlier about the work that you do for CASA. And I want to spend just a little bit of time just kind of talking about the great work that you do here. Why is it so important for you to advocate for victims?
That's a good question, and one that I've been asked a lot of times and probably answered differently each time. Before we moved here from Columbus, Ohio. Terry got his his MFA from The Ohio State University. And so when he was ramping up, we had an opportunity here and in DC, decided we'll come to South Carolina. It's close to Florida. We probably won't be there long. Something happened home, we could get home, blah, blah, kind of thing. Well, I worked on campus in a residence hall there at Ohio State and became friends with some of the people in the residence hall. There's a young woman from Cleveland who I became very close to, who lived around the corner from us after she moved out of our residence hall. And she was a victim of date rape. And I remember her coming around to our apartment and, knocking on the door and saying, I've been raped, this guy, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
kind of thing. And I just remember feeling so helpless, not knowing what to say to her, not knowing if I was being helpful or whatever. And I vowed to never be in that position again, so that if somebody came to me, to not be able to help. Shortly after we moved here to South Carolina, and I saw in the paper about a training, a rape crisis training. There were a group of people from mental health, the sheriff's department, the hospital, that had come together saying, you know what, it's a shame that if somebody gets raped in Orangeburg, they ain't got nowhere to go. Oh, wow. Nothing. And so out of that, I volunteered, took the volunteer training, started going on call. And pretty soon, after a couple of years, it was like everybody was leaving. It was like one took a minister took a job at another. He was assigned to another church. So people career changes, and there were like 3 or 4 of us left, and they were like, "So Gilda, you gotta do this now. You gotta take over." I'm like, I'm looking around. Why I gotta do it? I ain't from here,
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short, I stuck with that.
Wow.
And I am just getting to a point where I fully appreciate what this agency has become, given where it started. And I had the person who has done our books forever was here working last year, and he shared with me and Labrina a story. He was telling Labrina, he said, you know what? I remember when, Miss Gilda, we were doing your books, and Rick and I told you, you're going to have to let this go because you don't have any money.
Oh, no.
He said, you started crying, and you said, I'm not letting this go. I said, really? I cried. And so it's just something that I know is needed. And it's one of these fields where people are so judgmental, and they just have such biases toward victims of rape, victims of domestic violence, all of that. We're quick to say, "Oh, she must have done something. I know him. He's a nice guy," or, "Well, it wouldn't be me." So it's
so
just
you're in that situation.
You know what I mean? And so because I somehow gravitate toward controversial stuff and have the attitude, well, what the hell, I'll do it. I've just been doing it, and have had over the years wonderful people as board members, as staff members. We've had growing pains, we've evolved. I am very proud of what Casa Family Systems is and what we do. And there are 3 words that I have lived my life by. And those 3 words are in spite of. And anything can come after that. In spite of people talking and don't know what they're talking about, keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
In spite of misunderstandings, in spite of folks saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, we can't fund you," in spite of. And it's up to the individual what comes after in spite of. But I find that if you got the determination and the drive, and I keep thinking about my upbringing, hey, stand. Even if you got to stand by yourself, you stand for what is right. You do what is right. And so I'm very pleased and proud, because it's been a struggle here trying to do this work. There are people through the years who have tried their best to shut us down. There are people who have come and it's like, oh, we can do this, and they tried. And so my comment, my mantra to the staff is just keep doing the work. Do it right, do what we know we need to do, and just keep it moving. You can't hit a moving target. And we've done that consistently over the years, and there are people who have come and gone. My aunt had this saying, that I love. And I say to the staff here, you know, I'm in the B class. I'm going to be here when you come.
Okay.
And I'm going to be here when you go.
I love that.
I thought it was cute. I love it. She used to say that all the time. And see, I grew up with all these sayings, and they just appear in my mind.
Yeah.
My mom had one, which has helped me, feed people out of a long-handled spoon. And what that means is when you find a person out, you keep your distance.
You know who
it's
they
like
are.
you know who they are. When people show you who they are the first time, believe them.
Right.
And all these little, you know, I know
love
we're
it.
way off topic.
I'm going to remember
Oh
that
yeah,
one, though.
and it doesn't mean you have to be nasty or anything, but just know what you're dealing with,
Right.
and keep them at a distance.
Well, the work that you do I definitely see it as spiritual work, but just also work of compassion. So you definitely have to have a heart for individuals. So tell our listeners how we can help CASA.
Well, of course, there are always ways that you can be of help. The automatic one is to save money. We are a 501c3 tax-exempt organization, and we have a lot of programs that we are engaged in. And so, of course, giving a donation to CASA Family Systems would be great. We need volunteers. We do an annual volunteer training every year. And so we have an opportunity to always allow people to come in and help us help families.
Okay.
And so the best thing this is great news. After 2 years, maybe longer, we are about to move back into our shelter, which has been renovated. Again, that's an example of people just talking and not knowing what they're talking about. Oh, they used to have a shelter. What happened to that? I heard they done shut it down. All that kind of crap.
Right.
Newsflash, we are
Coming back bigger and better, right?
Coming back bigger and better. So you boo birds just keep on booing, because we gonna keep on moving. So anyway, long story short, there are so many opportunities to help, and I am not doing justice to them. So I would encourage anybody out there who'd like to be involved to call 803-534-2448, and our staff will be happy to make sure that we engage you. And by the way, the real operator here, the real worker bee, is the chief operating officer, Miss Labrina Aiken-Furtick.
Yes.
She's a state college graduate, does a great job, keeps it moving, keeps things going, and I will be honest and say, were it not for the leadership and the supervision and what Miss Aiken-Furtick does here, we would be where we are. Okay. We would not be.
We'll definitely put the phone number on the screen and make sure that information is shared with our viewers.
We got a website too, www.casafamilysystems.com.
My final question to you, what is your hope for South Carolina?
Oh, you know, we are in such difficult days and times because ignorance reigns. You know, it used to be ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is not bliss anymore. My hope for South Carolina is that we will figure out that we are all in this together. None of us are going anywhere. And we need to be better citizens. Civic engagement is important. We need to treat people right. We need to do right. And we've got to stop teaching hate. If I had one wish for South Carolina, it would be stop teaching hate of any group and start being embracive of all of the many beautiful cultures that we have. Because it's a tapestry. It's a quilt.
So I want to thank you so much.
I
know you're like super busy, you know. I also want to thank you too for always being an advocate for SC State University and for SC State PSA. And we can always count on you to support us.
That's important. It is about HBCUs.
Yes.
And I say to folks, people here used to be so concerned because I was a proud rattler. And I'm like, y'all need to be that way about state. I believe everybody, I believe in HBCUs. I promote HBCUs. Home is where the heart is.
Yes.
And though Florida A&M is my heart, I bleed orange and green. I live here. And so SC State, Claflin, Denmark Tech, those schools are important. Benedict. Allen, Morris, Clinton. Those schools are important, and we've got to support them. And I would say to to Bulldog Nation, like I will say to Rattler Nation and everybody else, stop depending on the government to help you, because
Now you're about to start preaching.
See, by the way, $30 million in this year's budget for the library. I am very pleased that I was able to do that, because it's like, look, I'm all for residence halls and student unions and all of that, but the library is central.
The center of academia.
It's center. And if you don't have a library where students can go in and do research and just do stuff, and just be, then you're missing a big part of it. And so I've been pushing and begging and cajoling for at least 3 years now. Thought we would get it last year when we had all that money. I won't say who got it, but anyway, but I'm thrilled that this year, finally, we have $30 million in that budget for the Miller Whitaker Library, and I am very excited about that.
Thank you.
That's for all you Bulldogs who say, she don't care nothing about state, she went to BAMU. All right.
The proof is in the pudding.
Hey, may the work I've done speak for me.
It does. It does. Thank you so much. Thank you again. Thank you for the work that you do for the state of South Carolina, for families and communities in Orangeburg, Bamberg, and Calhoun counties.
Statewide, because people call me, I mean, I'm not limited by a district. If you call me and I can help you, I do. And that's probably why I get calls from everywhere. But I think that's how it should be.
Yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us for Elevate Leadership Podcast. Again, it's produced by South Carolina State University's Public Service and Agriculture. Our guest today was Gilda Cobb-Hunter, representative for District 95, which is Orangeburg County, and we were so blessed to have her today to encourage us to use our voice, to always remember to be humble and never forget where you've come from. Thank you again. Thank you for watching today's show of Elevate Leadership Podcast. You can catch us all the time on any of our streaming platforms at SC State 1890.